That's the sound of success.
I had like a whole mental breakdown.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
How do you say your last name? Persico?
Persico.
Okay, cool.
Like Prosecco.
Don't confuse me.
And who are you?
All right.
Persico.
Well, we're getting ready to start. Okay, so welcome to our podcast, Friends Living Well.
Here we are.
I'm Kelsey Hunter. I'm a BCBA. This is...
Nikita Mahone, licensed clinical therapist.
And we have our first guest today, Ashleigh Persico.
Hello, everyone.
Co-founder of Full Living Wellness.
Yes.
Can you tell the people what your fun little letters are at the end of your name?
So the magical letters at the end of my name are licensed clinical social worker, and then I'm also a certified integrative somatic trauma practitioner.
Holy cow. I don't think I've heard that one before.
So fancy.
Do you have that
That's a
one
new
behind your
one.
name?
No, I don't.
I was going to say, I don't think I've heard that before.
It's a new one.
That's cool. I think we should get into that. That's like where we're going to start. But we always, and I don't know if you've listened to episodes, but we always start with the caveat of
Full disclaimer.
full disclaimer. This is not therapy. This is not diagnosis. If you need that, don't listen to a podcast. Talk to a doctor. Hopefully maybe a psychiatrist or somebody like that.
Right? Not replacement of treatment, but we are glad it is a helpful tool.
Yes.
Yeah, we like to add some flavor. And we love to hear from our listeners if you have topics of things that we want to discuss. But this is a continuation of the series that we started last episode, which was anxiety and depression. So Ashleigh has a lot of expertise in this area. And so we thought it was a natural next step to invite her on, and she can kind of share her experience. So we're going to do kind of a deep dive into what her experience has been. And then we're going to talk about topics related to anxiety, depression, and specifically OCD, because for word on the street is that's something that you treat a lot, or you like to work with.
Yeah, so I don't specialize in OCD, but I
Okay.
have a lot of clients that come to me and either already previously have a diagnosis of OCD, and it's not really something that they're looking to navigate with me, but can kind of pop up in sessions sometimes.
Sure.
And then I also have clients that come with me thinking that they have anxiety, and then it ends up being that they actually have OCD. So
Wow. Yeah. So speaking to what we talked about last time, which is there's a lot of comorbidities between, meaning similarities, similar features and traits between OCD, anxiety, depression, stuff like that.
It really creates a chicken or the egg situation a lot of times, especially. I think that's why we naturally put depression and anxiety together, because they oftentimes go hand in hand. And then I know we spend a lot of time with clients then trying to figure out which one maybe came first. Were you a little more depressively inclined, a little more anxiously inclined? Does it even matter really for you?
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing because there's a lot of overlap.
yeah.
Yeah.
I see that for a lot of people, especially people who are stuck in an anxious state for a long time can then just slip into depression. And I feel like, learning about somatic therapy and stuff like that, a lot of times when your nervous system is so activated for so long, it kind of ends up breaking down and turning into a more depressive state.
That's interesting you say that, because that's something that I see in my work in the hospital, where like I will meet with a psychiatrist and we have a patient and they're having this like very like this is the presenting feature, and it might be overshadowing all these other things, and we kind of need to like treat that first before we can dive into other elements. So it kind of sounds like you're saying similar thing, but I want to know more about this somatic work that you're doing, or what that acronym. I guess I think it would be helpful for listeners to understand, like, as a clinician, how do I get that? Like, what is it good for? I think there's a lot of questions people would probably have.
Yeah, I feel like when I tell people that I have the certification, they're definitely like, okay. Like, what is that? And
but what does that mean and how do I get it?
So I got it through the Embodied Lab. It's a company, like an organization that does all different types of certifications and trainings that are based in somatic work. So integrative somatic trauma practitioner, I'll say, because they don't let us use the word therapy, basically is the idea of working with people who have experienced trauma and using like body-based interventions to navigate that. So a lot of it is learning how to reconnect to your body, understanding what's happening on like a nervous system level, especially because, as we know, a lot of trauma is stored in the body. So the things I learned a lot about were like polyvagal theory, understanding the different nervous system states, also IFS and learning about different parts.
Which is something Nikita loves.
I do. I love parts work.
Yeah.
I find that, especially as we're talking about like later on in treatment, like what you were saying a second ago, when things are a little more activated, not so stable. A lot of times we spend time focusing on that, using a whole different arsenal of tools to just get to stability. But then once we get there, oftentimes clients are really surprised because they're like, wait, I thought my treatment was going to be done, and then they realize there's like a whole other layer. It's like, okay, well, what brought you there?
It's just begun.
Exactly. And that's definitely where we get into some of the like once the body has had some time to release or process whatever has been stacked up and stored up.
Yes.
Then we do start to see more of the internal experience become focused on, which is where I find IFS to be such a, because IFS is really just a way of organizing
Parts of yourself.
Exactly what's happening inside.
Yeah. I love hearing you guys talk about what you prioritize, in therapy, because I think that's like, I think it might be helpful for other people to hear, like, we might need to treat this, like, whatever the prominent feature is. And like, when you say that, I always bring it back to my work, which is like safety. Like, we always have to intervene with what is most unsafe first. And
safe first.
Yeah. And so that's where, like, I hear you guys saying, like, oh, we have to treat like this, like, body activation to get to the deeper stuff. 100%. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. And even function, like I think we were saying to one another just before starting to film, of like basic hygiene and doing tasks of daily living and taking care of your animals, like all of these things. Sometimes people come in and all of those things are just not happening on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
So these we have to focus on sometimes first before we can get to a little bit more of like the complex things that.
Which makes a lot of sense now that you're saying it. But I guess my question for Ashleigh would be like, how did you get to somatic work?
So I've always been interested in just like the body and how the body functions and how the mind and the body are connected. And I actually had my own experience doing some somatic work with someone that I had been working with. And at first, like many people, I was kind of like hesitant of like, not like, at first you're kind of like, what is this like woo-woo stuff, right?
Exactly
you're like,
woo-woo.
yeah, you're like the body, like I need to connect with my body. So definitely at first I was hesitant, but then through my own experience of just kind of like learning how to slow down, learning how to like tune in, understanding what is happening on a deeper level physically, I noticed how much that helped me and helped me feel more connected to myself. So after I went through that experience with myself, I started to be like, I think this could be really beneficial for clients. And I started using it before I got certified, kind of testing it with some clients, seeing what would happen when I kind of encouraged them to just like tune in more. And it was really positive. So then I just like looked into the training and I did it.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that because I feel like that, I think that would make a big difference for me as like to be on the receiving end of therapy, to be like, do you know this works? Have you tried it? How did it feel for you? Like, to be able to speak to that experience, I think is probably that probably is what makes you such a good therapist. I feel like that's what I say about like Nikita, like why she's such a good trauma therapist, because she's been through like a lot of things and experience like, what do I need to do to help myself, which is why you're able to like help other people.
Yeah, it really does show, because the things that we experience in our real life and what we find helpful to us, the first thing you think of is, how do I now give this to somebody else? There are so many people I work with. How do I give this to them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So
Yeah.
that's really cool work. And again, like, I don't know, I just keep, as we're talking, I know it's only been a few minutes, but you're almost like reaffirming things that I'm finding in my clinical work that like, I'm not really talking with other BCBAs about, because a lot of BCBAs, and this is like a criticism of behavior analysis, especially with like autism, is, we're not treating like emotions. We're not like actually looking at like what's going on outside of like an observable behavior. But a lot of the work that I've been focusing on with my parents that I work with is like, does this kid have any bodily awareness? Like, I keep asking that question. So I've started doing that like in my my initial interviews, where I'm like, so can they tell you when they're hungry? Can they tell you when they're hungry before it's like hangry?
Yes.
Like, can you tell me can they know when they need to go to the bathroom without like, oh my God, I have to go right now. Right. And I'm like, oh, like if they can't articulate or understand those like very obvious physical sensations, then how can we ask them to emotionally regulate
100%.
and use coping strategies? So I love hearing that that's like something that you're doing a lot of.
I feel like that's a big thing that I even notice with my clients is, in today's society, we're constantly distracted. There's so much going on, so much stimuli. And I feel like people actually don't take the time to really check in with themselves and just slow down and understand like, what is actually happening inside of me? What is my body saying to me? So I feel like doing that's a lot of the times like what I try to do first. And then once you become more connected to yourself and understanding kind of what your body is speaking to you, it's so much easier to do everything else.
On that note, I'm curious for yourself, and then now when you're working with clients, how do you help people start that? Because that's especially when you feel so disconnected or you're in such a place of activation. How did you first experience that, where you were able to start connecting with your body again? And then when you work with people, how do you start helping them to tune back in?
Yeah, so I feel like it's, every person's different. It's kind of like figuring out how safe they feel first. Some people feel more safe than other people in their body. If someone has a lot of, sexual trauma, physical trauma, it might not feel super safe. So it's kind of like dipping a toe in. So for example, there was someone I was actually working with recently and has a lot of social anxiety. And they notice that when they go into social settings, they start to feel very detached from themselves. So what I had them do was just kind of notice and observe, not assign any meaning, but kind of notice that when you're around certain people, what do you notice happening in your body, right? Like maybe you notice, I don't know, like a sensation in your chest, or maybe you notice you're feeling flush, or maybe you notice your breathing becomes labored. So the first thing I do is usually just having them kind of observe and kind of like just gather information, and then coming back to me and we start to kind of put the pieces together. So that's one example. Another example, for example, like someone who is very depressed and they're completely immobilized, slow somatic work can be, getting out of bed for like 10 minutes and then you can get back in bed, or like brushing your teeth. You don't even have to brush your teeth at night. Let's just start with just in the morning.
And would you have them be like observing how their body feels when they do those things?
Yes, like noticing like, okay, I got out of bed. What did that feel like?
Okay.
Doesn't mean you can't get back in bed, right? Like that's kind of like dipping your toe in.
Yeah.
Like I'm not asking you to stay out of bed all day. I'm just asking you like, let's spend 5 minutes in a different room.
And there's so many conversations to have, like as simple as a task as that is, like to just like, there are so many places to review with somebody about what that feels like. Like even getting into conversations of what it feels like to take the blankets off.
Yes.
Like I've had people say that's like removing like a layer of skin. They're just like, it feels like so raw, just like that. So it's like backing up and being so slow.
Yes.
And validating of like, there's so many steps to this task.
Yeah.
And if you're in such a state of depression, the smallest one might be the thing that we have to talk about first.
That's
like
why I say dip a toe in. Like
Yeah.
It's like little stuff.
Little, like, and I'm hearing a lot of like non-judgment. I'm just hearing like just observe and like comment.
Yes. I don't care if you go back in the bed after. Let's just step out of it and see what happens.
Yeah. So that's where you would start.
Yes. It's kind of just seeing where they're at
Mm-hmm.
then kind of slowly adding things in.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I
so
love
then,
it.
can I then pivot back to like before you became a clinician,
Yeah.
or like can we talk about how you got to being a clinician, like what your
Yes.
journey has looked like? Because that's where we started with, like, Nikita and I in our first
Yeah.
episode. We were like, this is just who we are, and like this is where we went to school, and this is what our
Yeah.
clinical work looks like. And I feel like, again, like if I had been able to maybe like have a vision into the future of like this is what it could look like clinically, that's so helpful for people. I was in Ocean City Coffee the other day, and I was hearing this girl say like, oh well, I'm thinking about like I want to be an OT, and I'm thinking about like, oh, what does that look like? And I think it'd be so great to give like a little window into like this is what people's clinical experiences are. So
Yes,
then
and it's not linear. It was definitely all over the place.
yeah. So tell us about that.
So I always was interested in people. I always liked talking to people, learning about people. So that was always kind of like a base thing for me. But I didn't know that was what I was going to end up doing professionally. So the first college I went to was Brookdale Community College. And when I was there, I don't think I had a major, or I had like a general, like liberal arts major. And I started taking gen ed courses, and I noticed that I really liked the courses that were about like human development and psychody and stuff like that. So I was like, okay. And a lot of people around me were becoming teachers. So I was like, maybe I want to be a teacher. Got into the classroom, and I was like, no.
JK.
I was like,
What do you?
I was like, I don't like being told what I have to do. They were like, okay, this is what you'd have to teach. I was like, okay, stop there.
Can't do it.
Okay, so for people that don't like being told what to do.
Ashley was like, how do I teach kids to listen to the rules when I won't listen to the rules?
I was like, wait, I was like, wait, this job is so difficult. Like, I have so many friends that are teachers, and I'm like, this is such an amazing job. But I was like, okay, there's aspects of this that I'm getting there. This isn't it, but I'm getting there.
Yeah. I love
so
that.
Funny. So then I got my associate's degree at Brookdale, and then I had to transfer to a 4-year university. So I transferred to Temple in Philly.
They have a lot of great programs.
Yeah, I loved it.
They do.
So when I went to Temple, that was when I was like, okay, I need to get out of education and figure out what I want to do. So I remember talking to my advisor, and I was telling them, I like working with people. I want to help people. I don't really know what I'm doing. And the woman was like, okay, well, what about this degree that we have, this program that's called Human Development and Community Engagement? So basically what that is learning about how humans developed over like a lifespan, and then working with nonprofit organizations to help underserved communities. So I was like, this sounds great. So I started doing that, and that's what I ended up getting my degree in. And then while I was at Temple, the last year there, I had to do an internship. So we had to interview and do a bunch of like networking stuff to get the internship. And the one that I got was working for this organization called the Consortium. And they
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, they have all different programs, and kind of their primary thing is working with adults with serious mental illness. So I was like, ooh, this sounds interesting. So I started doing that, and where they placed me originally when I went for my first day was in the like administrative office.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, where are the people?
Yeah, like who do I get to talk to?
Yeah, I was like in the office, and I was like, so what am I going to be doing? They're like, you're going to be like, it was more like macro, I would say like more macro level stuff. And I was like, oh, I was really hoping I was going to be like working with the clients. And they're like, well, we don't.
They were like, are you sure?
I'm like, where are all the people?
We have all this labor you can do otherwise, thanks.
Like, this isn't going to really work for me. So
Yeah.
I talked to my supervisor, and they were like, okay, well, the consortium has a program that works with adults with serious mental illness. It's like a day program where they like reintegrate them back into the community. And I was like, that's where I want to be. But they were like, we've never had an undergrad intern there. So I was like, okay. So they basically figured out like how to tailor it towards an undergrad, and I started interning there and I loved it. I did a lot of like observation. I would be in like groups, individual sessions, stuff like that. And then I graduated from Temple, and then I was looking for my first job, and this is where Nikita came into my life.
I love this full circle.
Our love story.
So our love story began. And I got a job at JFK working in a similar type of program. And then I saw Nikita from across the room. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my
Play
god!
like angelic music. Cue that.
You locked eyes. You licked your
I was
lips.
like, hello. So I got a job at JFK. It was a similar type program. It was,
How did I not know you worked at JFK together?
Oh, you didn't know this?
No, I don't know. So
You didn't know how we met?
No, for the listeners, I've never
So
heard this
funny.
detailed backstory. I mean, you might have told me, and I,
I'm right over that. Cute little
stupid
head.
brain not working. Oh my gosh, I love this.
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
So, sorry, I'm like choking on a lemon lime.
Yeah, we got these juices. Look at all that
Oh my
pulp.
gosh.
The cayenne really
The
kicks.
pulp is pulping.
Like the cayenne really hits the back of your throat.
So, and it was so funny. So I got the job at JFK. It was my first job out of school. And
I remember your first staff meeting too.
Oh, you do?
Because I had already been there for a while, and I was like, oh man, like I really hope this goes okay.
You're like, save yourself.
Because yes, it was such a difficult community to like
Oh my
enter,
God.
especially entering into it is such like,
I had no clinical experience.
there's so much judgment and you're getting observed and you're literally walking into like the cafeteria. When you would walk into it, there's like anywhere from 20 but sometimes like 100 people standing in there, and it's not the friendliest because they want to see how you're going to react.
Yeah.
Especially you're usually like
It's a lot.
the only white people in the room also, so it's like everybody's kind of feeling you out, like where exactly do you fall, how safe are you, how
For listeners that don't know what JFK is,
yeah.
can you tell them like what type of setting this is?
So the program that me and Nikita worked for, it was a day program. So basically the clients would come like from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And it was for adults diagnosed with serious mental illness. So basically it was people diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, severe depression, basically any severe mental illness that significantly impact their ability to function. So
Okay.
a lot of our clients were homeless or were in and out of homes.
and that's the thing of it being a community organization,
Yeah.
is this isn't like private care, it's supposed to be there for the community to
Yes.
come in, so it is, your population are those that are needing it most, which does tend to be homeless
Yes.
or recently hospitalized and
Yes.
released
Yeah.
or recently
people
incarcerated.
people coming out of prison.
Okay. So low socioeconomic status
Yes.
type area. Probably it sounds like predominantly people of color.
Yes.
With severe mental illness.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think the reason I wanted to clarify that for people, because I could see how when you're walking into like a community-based behavioral health place, like the work is so serious
Oh my gosh.
that you have to have such a tight-knit group of staff, because like not everybody
You
can
have
just
to be
do
tough.
that work.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
intense.
So I could see how like walking into that, it would be like, oh my God, like I'm shitting my
I had no idea. Like, wait,
intense.
Nikita, like, okay, so I came in and I'm like fresh out of school. You know, I did
Looking cute.
looking fresh, ready to seize the day.
She literally walked in and was like, hey guys.
Yeah, and everyone was like, welcome.
She's like, I just like girly popping around.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm here to help people. So I come in and I mean, I did the internship, but I just observed. I have no clinical experience. So I come in and basically the way the program was set up was there were individual therapists and then there were recovery coaches. So the individual therapists did the clinical work. They would do individual therapy. They'd also do like clinical groups. And then the recovery coaches, which I was, I had a caseload, and it was basically like I would do like case management, like non-clinical work. I would
Okay. Like
help-
access to resources.
Yeah, access to resources, figuring out what their like basic needs were, and then I would run groups, but non-clinical groups.
Okay.
So that was my role. But then somehow I would end up like finagling my way into like doing clinical work.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say you
Nikita
always
was
ran
like-
the best groups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nikita was like, "This is a clinical group." I'm like, "I know."
But come on. Like, let me just do it.
Oh yeah.
So then me and Nikita became very close because I don't know, I feel like our approaches to things were very similar, and the way we worked with clients was very similar, and Nikita kind of became like a mentor to me.
Yeah.
I would always like sneak in her office and be like, "Hi."
I have this famous picture that every like couple of years it like comes up on my Google, and it's like of her just having a breakdown of like, what am I gonna do today?
Yes.
And she's just sitting in this chair, just like smiling at
Like
me.
white, like wrapped in a scarf, like, "Hi."
Like, what am I going to
Yes.
do?
Yeah,
So you
so-
both were like, oh my God, we're amazing and perfect. And
Yeah.
so we should be
We were
best
like,
friends.
we're so similar. Yeah. So then we became friends, and everyone there, like, we became close to a lot of people there. It was like, you know,
The work was so important. I think that was something that really connected
Yeah.
us was, the clients that you're supposed to work with are drawn to you. And we were in such a devastated population that the levels of trauma and abuse that people had gone through was to the point that their entire psyches and world had crumbled. That was the levels of
I had
it.
a client with dissociative identity disorder. Like, it was
Like, actually diagnosed.
Yes,
Legit,
it was
which is so rare.
I was
it
going to
was
say, for listeners, that's
very
very rare.
and yeah, like, it was really
That could be a
intense.
whole deep dive we do.
It's
yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah.
It was so.
Wow.
I mean, like.
For a clinician starting out, in some ways,
That's-
it was such a gift because the likelihood of us, unless we go into a hospital setting, the likelihood of us
Oh my God.
experiencing that.
Yes.
I was going to say, because, I've worked in, it wasn't community behavioral health. It was a private school, but it was like working with the like level of severity, acuity that you guys are
Yes.
describing.
Like crisis. Yeah.
Crisis all day.
That was like us. Of
Yeah.
course, my caseload was always in crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like working in those settings where like the stakes are so high,
Yeah.
the needs are so high, like it feels like you're going through war.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so
It
it
feels like-
bonds you with the people that
Yes.
you work with in like such a unique way, because it's like in no other setting would I literally like be covered in somebody's like feces and actively bleeding and like sweating and like looking at another person and like cracking up laughing because like somebody like pulled their underwear off in like a funny way, or you know what I
No,
mean? Like
it was
you know,
you literally had to find your safe space. So it was like Nikita, and then there was another therapist there, Marina, another one, Dina, and like we would like go get coffee.
We were the
and
gang.
We would like
Yes.
hide in each other's offices.
Oh,
like,
girl gang.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was the best. And we had a really great supervisor, Kara.
Yeah.
Which she'll come into the picture again. 'cause
oh my God,
especially-
same Kara.
Yes,
Same
yes.
Kara.
Oh,
Yes.
full living wellness.
Literally.
Full living
Yeah.
wellness in so many ways. And before, because it's come up a few times, I feel like we really had a good community going when we started. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
such a different vibe
Like,
from
great
when
therapists.
where it was years later. But when we started, the essence of community, that was 100% lived in that space. Like there would be times where like somebody new would come and they'd pull like a knife out or something, and the entire group would just like everybody back to back, like holding one another down, safety. And you could tell like exactly what you were just talking about. Like, and that's why it probably took a while too. When you would walk in, like you had to show
Yeah,
that you were
because-
with.
It was like a fan. Like the clients there were
yeah.
I mean, the clients that were there for years.
Yeah, these are not unfamiliar. And
No.
I'm also curious too, because I saw this in public schools. We would see kids from the same family like come in, like they were well known in the community enough that we would actually kind of see like generations of people from the same family. I'm just curious, like I don't know if you saw family systems come through.
Oh yeah, especially when I became director. That wasn't so
Yeah,
much
Nikita
when
was
we
there
were
longer than I was. There
Okay.
longer than me.
when I became director, because we had children's programs and then we had older adults.
Oh, so they aged from one to another.
I would see grandma,
Yeah.
parent,
Yes.
and kiddo all in
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
And especially JFK is one of the oldest community centers that there is. It's right in Center City.
It's right by City Hall.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what was really cool about the program and like what I got to do being a recovery coach was once a week we had to bring clients out into the community. Do you remember this?
Oh my gosh.
So it'd be
so
like
many good
me
trips.
and like 4 clients, and I would have them in like the art museum, like looking at like Monet.
Or like 10 because we were like,
or like
screw
10
the rules.
because we were like, yeah, like that was not allowed.
You say community outing and like the hair on the back of my neck raises.
Oh, yeah.
I've just had so many scary situations.
We'd be in the park like painting. It was so
I
fun.
can't even look at the Acme in Newtown Square because it's
Oh my gosh, I miss the clients so. It was really hard leaving. Like
yeah.
when
You
I
bond with them because like
Huge.
like, and I think that this is the other thing that like draws people to this type of work is like you are their family.
Yes.
And there's so much meaning there. Like when you're the ones that are seeing them day in and day out and like they don't have any family and it's Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
Who's
Yeah.
spending time with them? It's us.
Like I had a client that was in the hospital once. I like went to the hospital and saw her. I had one that like Nikita knows. I was like so I loved my clients.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I would like there was like if they wouldn't come to the program and if they did have housing, you would have to go to their house and like get them.
Yes. Wow.
I would like I remember once I like went to a client's house.
Safety calls.
And it was
Yeah, to
an
make sure.
interesting experience.
But it gives you a lot of, I'm sure,
Oh, yeah.
insight into like the life that they have.
And I feel like that helped me so much with the work I do now in terms of crisis, like what actually is a crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Like, is this actually a crisis?
Yeah, it's so good to it's so good to have that perspective. And I also feel like I also sometimes have to check myself because I have such a skewed severity I don't know what
Scale.
the scale, yeah, where I'm just like, okay, like is this normal for this situation
Yeah.
or like is it, but I think that is great perspective to have. I'm loving this, but I don't know if you can tell I'm like so interested.
It's so
in this
interesting,
story.
right?
It's
Yeah.
so funny. So then eventually like Nikita and our other squad there were like, you need to go get your master's. Like you need, like Nikita was like, you're a therapist. Because at that point I still was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. And Nikita was like, no, you're a therapist.
I was gonna say, how do you not know when you're doing such meaningful work?
Well, I was like, okay, so like you're a therapist. I want to be there. And she was like, yeah, you need to go get your master's. So I ended up leaving. That was so hard. I still have letters from the clients. They wrote me letters.
I have pictures of my people on the.
And a lot of them couldn't read or write. So like Nikita had to like they would say it to her and she would write it.
You better not cry.
That
makes me
You
really
know what I'm thinking
emotional.
about.
especially this time of year because it's we would go through we would do so much, especially
we would
Ashleigh
bring
and
them
I.
out we would collect items for like the homeless and we would bring our clients out and
They would hand out
hand
hundreds
out
of bags and
to their
hug
friends.
people and
to their
cry
friends. We would
and
have like
That's such meaningful work.
that's what I'm saying. It was the hardest of work, but it was the best of work.
Should we I'm pointing to where the tissues are for you. Because we usually cry on the pod.
Okay.
Right. I'm also looking at that picture you have. Speaking of just clients.
Is that on camera? Okay, good.
It's like HIPAA violation.
Well, they're not my client anymore, and the parent gave it to me like as a parting gift. I think about him often.
It was
That makes me
so
feel like
special.
maybe we need to add to our holiday tradition of like doing something like community work or something
we
every year.
loved it. Like it was
Full Living
huge.
Wellness.
We did.
Oh my god,
Should
remember
do
the
something.
play?
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my god, wait, we did crazy.
We started doing a closet which would take up literally the entire like huge room of
Yeah, so
we would
people
just
donate,
collect
like,
so much
coats,
clothing.
Oh, wow.
hygiene, like tampons, pads,
Everything.
Yeah.
And we would do it by like size. So we would take a Ziploc and we'd put like, I don't know,
Because
like
we
an
wanted it to
extra
feel
large-
like shopping. We were like, this
Yes.
isn't going to feel like we want it
pick
to
a
be
blouse.
nice.
Like we'd go to people that were homeless and be like, pick a blouse,
Pick a pair of
a
pants. Yeah.
pick like an accessory.
No wonder it would have been hard to leave. Like
was
you're like
so
that's such
hard.
not to say the work right now is not meaningful, but it's
No.
just meaningful in a different way.
Yeah, it was intense. And
Yeah.
The play that we did.
Wait, so Nikita, yeah, this is.
I forgot about that until you said that.
I know. So Nikita always came up with like the best group ideas. Number one, she ran a cooking group. So
That makes so much
so
sense.
much sense. So the clients had to be fed.
That was another part of the program. Yeah, we had to feed
we
everybody.
had to feed everyone lunch. So Nikita was like, well, let's just do a cooking group and we can cook lunch for the clients. So some of the clients would sign up for the cooking group and they would like cook with Nikita, and Nikita and the clients would cook food for the whole group.
Yeah, the whole building.
And then Nikita was like, I want to do a play group. Like putting on a play.
This is my worst nightmare.
Wait, it was so good.
And it was so trauma informed. Even the cooking class, everything. I made it
Everything
so
was
trauma informed.
So the play was the clients.
They wrote it.
The clients wrote it.
Oh my god.
So the idea was that the clients were expressing through, this play about what it feels like to have schizophrenia.
Shut up. I
So
am going to
wait,
cry. Can you hand me the
specifically-
tissue?
This was my favorite part was what they did. I gave them a prompt one day. I said, I want all of you to pick one positive symptom and one negative symptom that you've experienced in your severe mental
Yes.
health. And then that's what they played. They
Depicted.
were the symptom.
Yeah,
Oh my
so-
god, Inside Out before Inside Out.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
god, you're
But
a
it was
fucking genius.
But it was like psychosis based. So like,
she's literally the smartest
No,
person I've ever met.
it was-
It's annoying.
and I was like stage crew.
It's literally annoying.
I was stage tech.
Oh, yeah.
I'm picturing you with the headphones like you're wearing right
I have,
now,
like, the background on
clipboard, and you're like modeling.
Because anybody that wanted to be involved, we were like, we had people that just sat people because they were like, I don't want to be, but I want to be a part. And we were like, fine, you can sit people. You can make up the flyer for us.
So we
You
put
can
the
do
play
the
on for the whole
drums.
building.
Yeah.
It was.
Oh my god, that's so
Wild.
beautiful.
So that was like some of the stuff we did. It was
It was so good.
And so you were doing that, and you're like, I'm not a therapist.
I was like, who do I want to be when I'm older?
Okay, so they send you off. They
So
say,
they were
Ashley,
like-
you have to get
They
a
were like,
master's.
leave. So I went to Rutgers University, and I got a master's in social work. And while I was there, I interned at Big Brother Big Sister.
Love.
Love them. And then I also interned for a year at the high school that I attended,
How cool is
which
that?
was really cool.
Another full
All the
circle.
teachers were like, wow,
Like,
look
what
at
are you
go.
doing?
I was like, I told you I'd be
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting about what you're describing too, and I think it's the same now because you went to school. When did you graduate from Rutgers?
Oh my gosh.
Remember the year?
It was during COVID.
Okay,
I
so
was
like
there
20
during COVID.
2020,
that, yeah.
2021
It
vibe.
was 2020.
Yeah. Okay.
I was going to say it would
It
be
doesn't
like
really
20.
matter. The point that I was making is like when you're stepping into the field, you're often doing a lot of like interning type.
Yes.
So it sounds like, and this is the thing that I encourage people to do, is to step in that type of a direct role, because then you can kind of sample.
That's when you actually figure out what you want to do.
Yeah. So that's where it's like, I think that it's so awesome. And it's so great for people to know, too, that especially if you want to go and get your master's, like you could step into a community organization and do case management. I feel like that's a really common
100%.
thing that I hear.
100%. Like if I never did that original internship when I was in my undergrad and I didn't push to be with the clients, I probably would have never gotten the job at JFK.
Right.
I would have never met Nikita.
Right.
She would have never been like, you're becoming a therapist. She would have never told me what my career path was going to be.
Yeah.
That was such a direct conversation.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be a therapist.
I was like, so what is the timeline? Because we have to pull triggers.
She's like, you need to like get this started.
I swear. She's like omnipresent. Like, I swear to God, like Nikita can literally fucking read the future sometimes.
Even back then, I knew. I was like, when we're going to start a private practice.
I remember
literally
Nikita
insane.
coming to me and she was like, some people are therapists because of reading books and learning.
Yeah.
And then there's people like you who were like just naturally born to be a therapist. And I was like, I'm leaving. I'm quitting.
But that's what I keep getting from your story is like it sounds like you just have such incredible natural instincts. Like, you made it happen for yourself.
Yes.
Like,
And
you were like,
yeah.
I could have been shuffling papers in this office,
was
but you were
like-
like, this is
I'm
boring.
like, bring me the people.
Yeah.
Wow. And you
Wow.
can't fake it. That's why even in
can't.
communities like JFK, even though we were so different or we had such
Oh,
different
yeah.
backgrounds from
We had
everybody.
nothing to like. I had no like no understanding of what their experience was like.
Right.
But I also wasn't like gonna pretend I did. I was like,
But that's what's so great. I think it's so important for people to understand and see, like, when you're walking into those spaces is like, because I felt similar in when I was working in Coatesville. I was like, I had a super cushy upbringing, like a middle class, you know, my parents are together, like I never had to worry about anything. And then I'm walking in here and these kids are like, my house burned down and my mom just died, and they're supposed to listen to me. Like, you have to kill your ego.
Yeah.
Your ego doesn't exist in
yeah, you
those
can't
spaces.
judge anyone.
Yeah, you just got to come in and like be open-minded and
Yeah.
follow your natural
Yeah.
instincts.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So I was at my high school interning.
Wow.
And I was in, like, they had 2 counseling departments. So they had, you know, like academic counseling and then they had mental health counseling. I was in the mental health counseling. This was during COVID, which was
Nightmare.
such a weird
Nightmare
experience.
to work in schools during
So
COVID.
crazy. And then I graduated. And as soon as I graduated, this is where it comes back full circle. When I was graduating, Nikita had just decided to leave JFK.
Wow.
So this was like the timing. So I graduated. Nikita decided to leave JFK. Our old supervisor at JFK had left.
Who was my
JFK,
mentor,
who was
Kara
her
Lacey.
Yeah, Kara Lacey. She decided to leave and open a private practice called Riverwards Wellness Collective. And she contacted Nikita. Kara contacted Nikita and I, and was like, I'm hiring both of you. So then both of us got hired, and we started working at Riverwards. I worked there it's been like over 3 years. And then one day me and Nikita were like, and Kara was always great. She was always like, one day you two need to like create your own thing. And she's very encouraging and supportive. And then me and Nikita were like, we're opening Full Living Wellness.
Yeah.
That's so sick.
now-
And you
yeah.
didn't you just pass your certification
Yes.
exam?
Yes.
Congrats.
Yes.
That's such a big
Yeah.
deal.
Did it.
Such a
So
big deal.
now
I had
we
no doubt,
own-
but it's a big deal.
Yes, I know. It's so scary.
Yeah.
But now we own Full Living Wellness, and then we took on Kelsey.
I know. Look at us now.
Now we're the 3 musketeers.
Yeah,
We
we
are
are
the
the three
team.
musketeers.
So that was my long-winded story.
No, I was like, I love that. I just like, it's so interesting to me that all 3 of us can sit in the same space and all be like, we worked. Like, I feel like our trajectories are somewhat similar in
Yeah.
like where spaces we worked in and how much that informed like our therapeutic
100%.
approach. Cause I'm just like, if you haven't like done that heavy work, like it's,
I tell everyone, I'm like, you have to work. Like, I don't know. I feel like what I got from community mental health has helped me so much.
Such a gift.
Like, I mean, most of my clients I work with have a lot of trauma, which obviously from doing that work. And then,
Yeah.
you know, anytime there's crisis, also, which is kind of like another topic maybe you guys could talk about at one point, like suicide, like suicidal ideation.
Sure.
Like really understanding what is active suicidal ideation, what's passive suicidal ideation. You know, having a client come in and say, I'm having these thoughts, and like what that actually means. I feel like that I learned a lot of that from
that
there.
would be really interesting, especially if we could relate it back to OCD and then also
Yes.
relate it back to
Like
autism,
self-harm,
because it's
yes.
something that I hear a lot. And
Yes.
I like, I don't know. I think it would be nice to hear more of like maybe a clinical approach to it. Cause I feel like I have an instinctual approach with some of it, like specifically with my autistic guys, because I'm like, I feel like I can tell the difference between like, this is just
Yes.
something we're saying because we're dysregulated versus.
Yes. And I also work with a lot of clients that have autism. I
Yeah,
love them.
I think we'll have to dive into that
Yeah.
in like the next episode. But the question I wanted to ask Nikita is like, what did it feel like for you kind of to be like in that mentorship position and kind of see her like journey in that way?
Well, it felt really easy and natural because I could see that Ashleigh was seeing a lot of the same needs in clients that we were working with. So like you know, it was a really easy job to like go in if you wanted to and run a group and be like, a coping skill is this. Here's a worksheet.
Here's the anger meter.
Yep. And the clients would just not pay attention, do their own thing, take a nap, and nobody would say anything to you. That was kind of what was expected of it. But what
I was like, wake up.
Oh yeah. Ashleigh took it so serious. Yeah. Like her check-ins would, you know, in the morning would be like, and what's an emotion that you would like to feel today? Like, you know, so there were all these things that I could just see that which just drew me in.
Yeah.
Because you could see her and her passion and her care for the work.
Wow. So it just came through, like, it was just, she was just doing stuff that was therapeutically inclined that, like, she didn't even realize she was doing.
100%.
That's
just
cool.
the care and the natural knowing how to be there for people, not to judge people. And I think the trauma piece, like really being able to see the client, not just the symptoms. And I mean, especially there were so...
I know.
Just like, even when I think of like hygiene and stuff, just, you know, bed bugs and lice and everything you can imagine, that's a barrier.
Yeah.
And then you have somebody that is actively talking to stimuli or having a hard time remembering even who you are, even though you just saw them 2 days ago. And there was just so much trauma and active symptoms in that. And I saw her questions being really about like, how do I help them?
Yeah.
How do I make this worthwhile for them so that way it's not? And I think a lot of our conversations we could talk endlessly about that when we get into like, how do we run a group, or we could focus on this or do that. And what if like, that's where we came up with all of these ideas. We were doing the most.
Clearly.
The most, but that's what made it so enjoyable for us.
And
I mean, I was planning full living wellness. I didn't have the name then, but I was planning I called it the wellness center. That's what in my mind I called it.
It is so crazy. All these things you're telling me, I'm like, literally, this is the definition of full circle. Yes. And the fact that you picked that name, like, that gives me goosebumps.
And that's
finally hit me one day.
Yeah. And also like and you're the same way, but like, I feel like all three of us are the same way in terms of just like living a very like holistic, more balanced life. So like, the idea of like full like living and wellness coming together, I feel like really depicts kind of what our beliefs and values
and
are.
Like therapeutic approach too, right? Like I'm not gonna just take one approach.
We don't believe in that over here.
No. And I also credit that like to be like why I feel that I'm quite successful in the role that I'm in, because like I don't want to just be pigeonholed by being a behaviorist. Yes. You know what I mean?
And people have different needs. So it's like, if you're which there are therapists that do one thing and they're amazing at that and people go to them for that. But like, that was never my way of doing things. I feel like it's not the way of you guys do things, because each client has different needs.
We're not always going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's totally fine. But I think that if people are looking for like a full picture, like that is, it sounds like where we are coming from.
Yeah. And I say that to clients during my initial intake. Like at the end of the session, I will say, you know, just because we met today doesn't mean that you need to keep working with me. If you ever decide that I am not the person for you, that is totally fine.
I love that.
Because I might not be.
Yeah, and that's totally fine.
I'm like, and that's fine.
Because it's not about us. No. It's about like,
and I don't want you to waste your time and your money. Like, find someone that works for you.
Yeah.
And there can be multiple therapists. Like, that's a very common experience. Have a therapist that focuses on one thing and another and different times and phases. I've had people see me, go to somebody else for something very specific, and then come back and see me and take what they've learned during that time and be like, okay, I want to add this to our work and exploration.
Yeah.
There's no one way to do it.
Yeah. I have someone doing that right now. Like, I referred them out for ERP because this goes into like OCD stuff, but I don't specialize in ERP. I use more IFS with OCD. And they needed something more tangible. And I'm like, go do that. And then we'll reconvene.
Yeah, come back to me when you're ready.
I'm like,
that's so interesting. I love that. It's so nice to be able to like get to know you in more of like a therapeutic, like clinical space.
I've never talked about this.
I know that this is not like, this is not therapy, but it's really, I like to pick your therapeutic brain. Yeah. Like it really helps me to get to know you. And I think it helps the listeners to get to know us as well.
It's good questions, Kels.
Yeah, I'm like just taking it all in. Yeah. But we have, I think this would be a good place to kind of tie it up. so that way we can end here. So this was another episode of Full Living Wellness.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here, and
Thank
we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year. Right, Elliot?